One thing that gets me incredibly frustrated about this entire thing is the fact that like Taylor is putting on this performance art spectacle of a lifetime, and so many of us are living through it and not necessarily realizing. Like, there are so many interesting things going on here, so many lessons being taught. It's fascinating how she's using all of the tools available to her to tell a story this way, and it doesn't even feel like she's even half done. So I may have upset some Swifties, and honestly, as a performance artler, as somebody who has theories that are very different than the norm, I'm kind of used to it. What often surprises me is that they never really get upset about the things that I expect. It's always like the one-off quick videos or something that I say as a joke that goes crazy. A good example is the fact that one time I dared to suggest that Taylor might be the cinephile in LOML, and I guess that is just a bridge too far for Taylor to write music about herself and facets of her personality. Anyhow, this time in particular, I performed the unforgivable sin of suggesting that she might be wearing a wig or a topper, and that she may be using face tapes to employ different changes to her face, because she's been playing characters this album rollout, but we'll get to that later. And I thought my tone was neutral. I thought it was clear that this was like a fan who was interested in something, like not somebody who is a hater. Of course, that was not how it was perceived. I think that reveals a lot more about those people than it does about me, another thing we're going to discuss in this video. And because I know a bunch of people are going to come to this video hot to trot, I am not suggesting that there is anything wrong or bad with Taylor wearing a wig. I'm suggesting it's an artistic statement. I'm not suggesting that there's anything wrong with her hair, or that it's thin or it's shedding or she's trying to hide some secret surgery she got. In fact, I think very much the opposite. Hey, just a question. When was the last time we saw Taylor Swift's like scalp, like her natural part line? Because I knew that she was using like a wig or a topper or something along those lines to hide like face tapes or something that she's had going on, which is why her faces look so different in so many of all of these interviews. And I was trying to go back to find the last time that I could conclusively prove that there was nothing on top of her hair, and I had to go back pretty far. Has it been like this entire has it been since Eras Tour? When was the last time? What does her hair look like underneath there? Ginger lures are quaking. The fact that a lot of people commented and just like went off without checking any of my other videos, that's something we really need to discuss too. Frankly, I believe this says a lot more about them and what they believe about Wigs and what they believe about Taylor and what they believe about what is bad and good than it does anything about me. And I really want to discuss that because I believe this is a central theme of this current album and its rollout as well. People are going to see things, people are going to make snap judgments, other fans are going to think completely differently, and it's going to result in a lot of chaos that ultimately keeps Taylor's name on all of our lips. But I think a big element of this album rollout is it is a performance art. Taylor is doing any number of things that are designed to either confirm or deny things that people have previously suggested about her. And people are seeing that. People are having their worst fears about her and their highest hopes about her confirmed alternately on both sides. Like, I have been in spaces where people love this album and see no faults. I've been on the complete opposite. I think a lot of people fall in the middle. But what is so interesting is how many people are talking about how many different angles and how many different things and seeing a lot about themselves and saying a lot about themselves when they come to the internet to make commentary about it. Like Taylor has been saying a number of times, if it's the week that my album came out and my name is on your lips, I've succeeded. I'm paraphrasing a lot through this. I don't remember quotes well, so just understand that no quote is exact. But in the New Heights podcast, one of the things that Taylor was talking about is the way that algorithms are designed to make us have a strong emotional reaction. She also spoke about the fact that like what you do, what you spend your time on your internet, like that is your life. If you're spending your time being mad on the internet, your life is being mad on the internet. But also a lot of people's opinions of this album have changed over time, especially as they see more of the little tidbits from the film version, from the interviews and things of that nature. And I think one of the other things that this is designed to make a statement on is the way that we make snap judgments and immediately go to the internet and we immediately say, oh my God, I hate this. Often before we stop and think, I hate this. Is this on purpose? What is this doing? Like, art is designed to make you feel a strong emotion. If you feel a strong emotion, I always stress, especially when you're commentating on an internet space, that you take a moment and think, why does this make me feel strongly about this? What is it that I'm feeling? And a lot of people are making videos from that initial feeling, that initial impression, which was less about how well they understood the album, but was more about them having either their highest hopes or their darkest fears about who Taylor is as a person confirmed. And I need to discuss social media smarts, right? Because anytime you feel a strong emotion when you're watching a piece of content, I really highly suggest that you pause for a moment, because obviously there are a lot of people that benefit both from your time, your money, your effort that you're putting in to having that emotion for that video. Sometimes you pause and you take a moment and yes, you watch that puppy video again. That's a real puppy. It's not an AI puppy. Go to the profile. You see, is this somebody who is harvesting videos from all over the place and trying to get like money, or is this the person that actually like owns this puppy and is posting this cute puppy video? But especially when you're feeling rage and shame and embarrassment and anything along those lines, you are being baited for your rage. Rage bait is one of the oldest and most successful techniques on the internet. If you hate something, that is always a sign, stop. Do I understand this? Is it satire? Is there an element here that I don't understand that is in play? Are my emotions being manipulated? Is this somebody who has a satire account? Always. Never make a snap decision off of a single TikTok. Always go to the profile, make sure there's not satire there, watch a couple of other videos. Are all of their videos kind of like designed to provoke a strong emotional reaction? Do they seem like they're playing a character? Do they have hashtag satire? Like the number of times I've seen people get really reactive to a video that said hashtag satire, like right clearly down at the bottom of the page. If you are being baited for your rage, your time and your emotion is being used to benefit that. And a lot of times if you're raging, if you're upset at that video, your rage is then being used to boost that video. This video where I posited, is Taylor wearing a wig? How long has she been wearing a wig? It got more interest than any of the videos that I've posted recently because so many people felt so strongly about it. But if they would have paused, if they would have gone to my profile, they would have found that a lot of my content is about analyzing Taylor at a deep level. And I very often preach that we don't take her work seriously enough. If you paid a little bit more attention, you would have realized that I'm not a hater at all. And sometimes it's just people are so far down a rabbit hole of a theory or a hobby or a fandom or something of that nature that you don't necessarily understand the things, the way that they're using them. They're using words differently. One of the things that I have a problem with is because you really can't silo away little subdivisions for little sub-segments of fandom. So a lot of times a piece of fandom content will escape containment, like we call it, and it will end up in the eyes of people who have no idea what's going on. And instead of sitting in that and being like, why does this make me uncomfortable? They immediately make comments that are really rude. Like if you feel a strong emotion related to something and you make what you think is like a snapback comment or a snarky comment or something like that, you are very often, in many people's cases, just looking ignorant of the context of the video at hand. And I understand, like sometimes there is no context, but you cannot expect everybody to give all of the context in a single video. The number of times I've seen people like, oh my God, I don't understand, what's the context? And the context was in that person's profile in the pinned video. Like, you can't expect people to post the entire context of their entire life in every single minute or less video they make. It's just like Taylor was saying on the New Heights podcast, like the algorithms feed you things that you're going to have an emotional reaction about, and your emotional reaction is being leveraged, but also at the same time is rage, is anger, is shame, you know, becoming your life. Because also when you comment on that, you are telling the algorithm that you want that. When you engage with content, like if you see something and you don't like it, just scroll, because then nobody else will see it. If you just get rage baited into commenting, or if it's just a situation that you're not perceiving the same way that the people that are discussing it are perceiving it, you're boosting something probably into spaces that it doesn't necessarily need to be, while simultaneously putting you, like, I've seen people like interact with 3 or 4 or 5 of my videos, like, why do I keep getting this? Why do I keep getting this? Because you keep commenting. It thinks you like me. And we're going to discuss more how this type of reaction plays into so many things that Taylor is saying in this album in just a couple seconds, but I want to introduce myself first. Hi, my name is AerinMoriarty. I love Taylor Swift, pop music, pop culture, things of that nature. I'm very invested in analyzing those type of things. I think it's an important part of our lives and our culture. And a lot of people are like, Erin, why don't you focus on something more serious? Because pop music has a lot more deeper meanings than so many people think. And I am dedicated to making more people realize that. I believe that media analysis and fandom discussions are very often avatars for things we have a hard time discussing in real life, like not living up to family obligations, or being a member of the LGBTQ, or difficulties that we're having in our relationships or in our careers. But more so than that, so much of what we consume today is produced media, and I believe taking a look at celebrity activities is often a good way to teach people how to be more media literate in other realms. If any of that speaks to you or you want to change how you see your media, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm still a small channel, so it helps me out a lot. And there's probably going to be bird pictures spread throughout. They are all pictures that I took myself because I like taking pictures of animals when I'm not doing this stuff. Now back to why I care, why they care, and how this plays into the album's release and its meaning. Why do I care? First off, Taylor has been bringing a lot of attention to Easter eggs with this album and has reminded us what she considers an Easter egg to be. She wants us to notice them. In Taylor's work, very often Easter eggs provide additional context and artistic symbolism, and she has stressed that she will never Easter egg about her private life, though she also regularly says that she lies, so we can't consider her a reliable narrator on any account. Regardless, one of the ways she has said that she Easter eggs is via hairstyles. She had a very prominent hairstyle for most of her era, so it's absolutely something that many theorists pay attention to. Taylor's also very clearly been wearing wigs in the music videos. At the pop-ups, there have been wig stands, and if you got the CDs that come with the extra pictures, some of the extra pictures include her taking a wig off. There have been a half dozen signs that are bringing more attention to wigs. Pointedly, this does not seem like a scenario where a celebrity is wearing a hairpiece and trying to hide that fact. If Taylor primes her audience to look for symbols, that means we're supposed to be paying attention to that symbol. And this really touches on a huge frustration that I have with a lot of Swifties that I don't see anywhere near as much with other performers that I try to analyze. White Knight Swifties are often so quick to jump in to defend anything they perceive as insulting of Taylor, and that makes it very difficult for anyone to have a deeper level conversations about the meaning of her music. If you want to take Taylor's music seriously and actually in good faith analyze her lyrics, you will invariably attract a tremendous amount of rage and hatred from the White Knight Swifties. And I'm using the term White Knight Swifties because there are some segments of the fandom that are incredibly amazing to be a part of, like specifically the performance art segment of the fandom is just the best group project that you've ever been a part of. And I know not everybody loves the term White Knight Swiftie. It was just something that was quick to say that I think gets the point across. If you can think of a better term for them, please let me know. I'm happy to use something different. But I like that people kind of already know what this means, I guess, because white knighting is a concept on the internet from a while back. Regardless, White Knight Swifties very often protect Taylor from her own artistry, which I think is a big reason for the current era that we're in, where she's seemingly teaching a lot more lessons about the songs, but also about behind the scenes stuff, pointing out the artifice, the facades, the marketing, the PR. But this is really another way in which Taylor is mirroring back a critic's own mindset. People are so bothered by this idea that somebody is discussing Taylor having a wig because they have a preconceived notion that it's not okay or it's embarrassing to wear a wig. Tons of people wear wigs every day. It's just the majority of people outside of certain subsegments of the population cannot really clock a wig well. One of the most confusing pieces of feedback that I received on that video was people that were insisting that Taylor had never once worn a wig in her entire career, even though she went out to dinner with a friend with hair that was very gold toned and about her boob level, and then the next evening she was on a night show where her hair was more silver toned and it was almost down close to her butt. This whole album cycle is about exposing what people's true sentiments are about Taylor and pop music criticism. And meanwhile, Taylor is bringing more attention to the fact that basically every time we see her, that is a performance that she's putting on. And I believe the wigs are a part of at least one character's performance. And as I've said a billion times, since Reputation era, we have never seen her like casual to go out and grab coffee or go grocery shopping the way she used to. This version of Taylor is brand image of Taylor, and we know that because every time she goes out, she does a ton of Easter egg flagging with her outfits and who she's with and where they're going. And I want to discuss bullying and nuance for a moment, because I think this is another arena where people are getting messed up. I think a lot of people have internalized this concept of not bullying people to the point where it is now off limits to discuss wigs or makeup or costume choices that performers make. But this, like many arguments online, is a nuanced topic that most people want to see as just A or just Z, not any of the letters in between. First, there are right and wrong ways to discuss all of these things, but during a zeitgeist where so many artists are using wigs and makeup and costuming to indicate different characters and so many artists are participating in performance art, I think we really need to be more diligent in recognizing the difference. One arena that is particularly difficult with this is trying to discuss the fit of costumes. If you suggest that a costume doesn't fit very well, often the inference that audiences make is that you're saying the performer is fat. And I think the key difference is in how you discuss it when you're discussing the performer versus the costume. Like, I would never say that Taylor Swift is too big for that costume, but I might say that costume is too small for her, or that I don't think the costume is well tailored for her. Mostly because then I can get a pun in. Or I might say that it's impeding her movement or something of that nature. I think a lot of it is about tone, and most people not reading tone as well as they believe they do. And a lot of folks just apply the tone that they would apply. So if I say that Taylor Swift is wearing a wig, which I feel is a neutral statement of fact, and they take it as negative criticism because if they say something's wearing a wig, that's what they mean. Or something worse, that is saying more about how they view wigs and performers wearing them than it says about me. Second, these are decisions being made by public figures when they are knowingly going in front of an audience of millions of people. If Taylor was a private citizen who I just bumped into, or if she was trying to covertly sneak into a coffee shop without anybody seeing, that would be a different matter entirely. But it's not offensive to wear a wig. It's not offensive to notice that a hairpiece is being used to portray a specific artistic statement. I will stress that I usually never use the term wig when I'm talking about artists who are people of color, just because I know that's a microaggression in a lot of cases. And I do think at times you should be cautious because wigs can conceal medical issues, but at the point where I saw a current up-to-date photo of Taylor's natural hair, I was confident that she wasn't wearing these wigs because she was insecure about it. I mean, people that are insecure about the fact that they're wearing wigs and don't want people to notice that they're wearing a wig don't have like dramatic photos of them taking wigs off, you know? And I do think with Taylor and Sabrina Carpenter in particular, because they perform under a character that has the same legal name as they do, it makes it harder for a lot of fans to separate the personas from the artists. I noticed that among Lady Gaga fans, it's often a lot easier to discuss wig and makeup choices because of the fact it's so evident, and she's been playing characters so much for so long, and so much of Mayhem is about that. But now Taylor has indicated that she's playing a persona, and both Taylor and Sabrina have been playing around with wig visuals a lot recently to kind of clue more fans into the fact that when playing a character, they do wear a wig from time to time. I do think there's also the realism aspect of everything. I do think we need to be delicately having discussions about all the work a performer has to put into looking a certain way, so that people viewing that performer don't think that they don't stack up. It requires a lot of work to keep your body and your face and your hair in the condition that a pop star keeps it in to stay relevant and avoid media criticism. We very often act like people who are pretty just have an easy time going through the world, but very few people are just stunningly beautiful with no effort. Haircuts and colors, manicures, pedicures, going to the gym regularly, watching what you eat, having a good skincare routine, having a good makeup artist, or being a good makeup artist on your own, wearing clothing that is very often extremely uncomfortable, having to change your outfit a dozen times over the course of a concert. Not only is that effort, but it is something that you have to work towards being able to deal with. Like, when there's just a lot of stuff on your head and your face and your body, it's not comfortable. Some of these really jeweled costumes probably weigh on the order of 20 to 40 pounds, if not more. A lot of what she's doing in portraying the Showgirl character is bringing more attention to not just the work that she has needed to do to keep herself Taylor Swift, but also to bring attention to the fact that it also requires a lot of personal sacrifice. And this isn't just about her, it is about every person, especially every woman who has ever had the kind of stature and influence in the media that she has. I think this is one of the reasons that Katy Perry had so many issues with her tour. It just didn't seem like she had done a lot of the prep work. It goes back to something that I mention a lot around here. Ginger Rogers had to do the same steps that Fred Astaire had, only in heels and backwards. I know that's somebody else's direct quote. Somebody could put it in the comments who that is, because I always forget. When you don't allow people to discuss the wig, the costumes, the makeup, that element of the artistry, we're overlooking, in my opinion, something that is and should be a prominent theme of this album cycle. And meanwhile, on top of that, the way that she is illustrating this for everyone and slowly making everyone more and more aware of the satire and the characters that are at play, she is provoking everyone to very loudly proclaim some of their deepest, darkest upsets at Taylor. If you only previously liked her because of her Folklore Evermore era where she was just a brilliant writer and you're just taking a surface layer interpretation of these lyrics, it seems very simple and it seems very poorly written. But Taylor has this amazing way of making it seem like she's writing poorly but yet still conveying so much depth of information. If you are a Fairweather fan who would have abandoned her during Reputation, and it feels to me like she's communicating, she won't accept that anymore. You either have to be a fan when you don't necessarily understand it and when the media and the pop culture is making fun of her, or you can go. It goes back to Dear Reader, find another guiding light, but I shine so bright. I have a video about that I need to work on editing still. I've been saying this entire time that this is an album that people's opinion about is going to change over time, and I think a lot of people have changed their mind already, just from the film experience and from the interviews and some other little tidbits that she's dangled above our greedy mouths. She initially released the album without the context to the fact that a lot of this is satirical, a lot of this is playing characters, and she was initially relying on fans to be able to read the lyrical subtext to do that. My initial first impressions of the album was that if it was meant to be interpreted at face value, it represented an extreme regression of Taylor's views and values, and that I believe that this was Taylor attempting to jog long-term fans' memories of who she used to be, to realize the Showgirl is a character. Because so much of her music up to this point has been about disproving the fairy tale or subverting the fairy tale. Because Taylor hated the fact that so many fairy tales ended sadly, but also Taylor has struggled with the fact that happily ever after is very seldom happy, especially when we're comparing real life to fairy tales. But if you don't have the media literacy or don't have the time to process the album on that level, she started giving hints that parts of songs were satire and the showgirl and the poet are characters. I want to know when she's been wearing wigs to better determine when she's playing specific characters versus herself. My interest in this is wholly academic, and personally, I think if your takeaway from my video was that I was weird or I didn't like Taylor, you should probably revisit your own internal biases, because that is context that you have added on your own. It is not context that I provided you with. When Taylor is performing as Wagler, or her more sports girlfriend character, she very likely wears face tapes that go up into a topper to make her face look more done up than it really is. It also seems like she did this on at least one of the interviews, because not all of her interviews were like this, but one of her interviews, her eyebrows were really pulled back very tight, and I could tell the people who had only seen that interview, and that was like the only recent contact they had seen of her, because everybody was commenting about how badly done her eyebrow lift was. People who only see her as incredibly shallow and only see her at these events may think she's had a ton of work done in order to fit in with that crowd. But if you pay attention to her at other engagements, her face is like her again. It's just sometimes where it feels more pulled back, more severe, while there's other times when she just looks more like herself. I started noticing this really hardcore towards the end of Eras Tour, when she would have an engagement with Travis and her face would look more stiff and more severe. Then 2 days later, she'd have an Eras performance and she would look like herself again. And other people have said, like Fillers and Brown, that's not how they work. You don't get that like once a week and then it gets better by the weekend. Oh my gosh, that would be awful. Taylor is playing around with the performance art concept of a mirror ball right now. Depending on what and where you see of her, she is confirming your suspicions. If you only see her at football games, she is playing very heavily into this image of being Travis's girlfriend slash fiance most prominently. Or as you look into the material she's released from the intimate behind the scenes production of the album, it is more unabashedly her. She went on several different morning shows, night shows, radio shows, and those interviews were full of contradictions. She also looked very different at some of those interviews than she did at other, even though they were all filmed, I believe, over the course of like a week or maybe two. Whatever version of her you go seeking for, wherever you're most likely to seek it, she is delivering that to you. One thing that gets me incredibly frustrated about this entire thing is the fact that like Taylor is putting on this performance art spectacle of a lifetime, and so many of us are living through it and not necessarily realizing. Like, there are so many interesting things going on here, so many lessons being taught. It's fascinating how she's using all of the tools available to her to tell a story this way, and it doesn't even feel like she's even half done. It's as she said on one of her talk show appearances, if it's the first week her album is out, if her name is on our lips, she is doing it right. She is thinking about her legacy. She wanted to break records because she realizes this is the biggest stage she's ever going to likely be in her entire life. She knows that everybody was going to be listening to this album, and so many people were going to immediately run to social media to talk about it. And people have listened. Record numbers of people have listened to this album and purchased this album, whether out of love or out of hate or out of confusion. So it has all worked marvelously well. This plan could not have pulled off better. And what you perceive about Taylor in the album after consuming the album is a reflection of how you see Taylor. That is something she has increasingly been trying to communicate, and it is a concept I've been coming to realize myself over the past few years of analyzing pop music. How you perceive art, the opinions that you have on it, is a reflection of a lot of who you are and what you've experienced inside. In putting your thoughts about media into the world, it is one of the ways that we preserve our own legacies and our own mentalities alongside the creators that we loved. You can see a lot of people's unconscious biases, though, in how they're perceiving this album. There are a lot of people who immediately throw away the entire 11-album corpus and almost 20 years of history that we have with Taylor to say she's never been a good writer. Even if this album is written poorly, it is a single album flop. She really has not had a poorly written album. That's not really a complaint you can make against Taylor. If you are taking the life of a showgirl literally, you have not paid attention to the entire history of lessons that Taylor has been giving. And she is increasingly bringing our attention to that, because this goes back to Blank Space, right? With Blank Space, Taylor coped with the criticism that she was getting for having a lot of boyfriends by making a song that was entirely like the character that they believed her to be. If they are only going to accept that she's this flighty girl who dates around a lot and she's a bit of a slut and she has emotional problems and all of that jazz, then she is going to deliver that in satire, because one of the best ways that you can show that something bothers you is to deliver that thing and to become in on the joke. With this album release, Taylor has been inviting us to become in on the joke. And it's been really interesting to see how many people are resistant to that versus how many people start out with one impression of the album and then their perspective of it changes over time. On one level, Blank Space is positing, if I really was this character, what would it look like? She is delivering them everything they think she truly is. She's satisfying her haters, and that allows them to like the song too. She takes the character that everybody thinks she is and she delivers that up to the 11th level, and that is who the showgirl is in part, but also the poet. A lot of different variants of Taylor. Whatever version of Taylor that you see is a version that she has cultivated for your, like, little sub-segment of the fandom. Taylor is satirizing herself and the fandom community by embodying not just the vision of her haters, but also the vision of her fans who only support her when it's cool to support her. But also the vision of her fans who love her and think she's a genius who can write really well as well. But since so many years have passed and so many people have different perceptions of her from so many different eras, she is confirming so many different people's theories and visions and beliefs while also showing what that person really thinks of that version of Taylor. Like, if you rejected the writing of this album because she told you the album was like folklore, then you're forgetting the aspect of folklore that was its characters that were based on facets of Taylor's personality. We understand that James is a character, not a lyrical genius. He is a teenager. He isn't going to be a genius writer the same way Taylor is, so we don't hold it against her that the songs from his perspective, the songs from all of the teens' perspectives, are a little bit more simplistically wrote. It's always deceptive, because she can write simple with just legions of depth. Taylor didn't necessarily mean that she was going to write it as densely as TTPD, it's just what your expectation of her is. If you took the love story of her and Travis as endgame and being 100% literal and were looking for the most romantic lyrics she'd ever produced, you will come back feeling unsatisfied in most circumstances. She is portraying so many characters, but one of the biggest is the perfect football wife who sets aside her entire career, all her ambitions, all her aspirations to settle for a man that is inarguably not on her level. One of the ways that she has pointed out that this album is from the perspective of a character is, you have a song on the album where she's saying that all she needs is her lover and their kids, and some of the thing that she specifically lists about not caring about are career awards like acting and directing awards. It represents a caricature of the traditional wife who sets aside everything she has to become a mother and a wife. But in one of the interviews she did, she explicitly stated that she finds it offensive that people would expect her to set aside career upon getting married and starting a family. We see a disparity in what Taylor believes and what the showgirl character believes. It's also in a lot of ways subverting relationships like Ballerina Farm, where she loved ballet and had opportunities and aspirations but set them aside for a man. A wealthy man, to be fair, but still a man. And what is she to do if that man ever gets bored of her and wants a younger model? Playing characters during interviews. First, I need you to understand that anytime we see Taylor, she is kind of playing a character, if not fully playing a character, and she is putting on a performance. I'm not saying that it's all fake. More, I'm saying that she's letting different parts of her personality be distilled into personas that she's wearing to help her best achieve her goals. I take everything Taylor says and does with a massive grain of salt, but I do think largely when she is talking about her career and professional achievements that she's being genuine. That is just the most happy and the most excited and the most emotional to any regard of anything she talks about. It really is clear if you watch most of her interviews that the thing that she values the most is her career. I have yet to see an interview with Taylor where she is exuding excitement over the prospect of marrying Travis, and more frequently, she speaks about marriage and everything around it in a very abstract sense, like how she spoke of watching her engagement ring like a TV. And a lot of her sentences are worded very weirdly. If she seems in any way excited about the engagement, she uses very vague terms like, "I'm happy to be marrying this person." When she speaks about Travis, it sounds more like talking about a friend. She just talks about how much fun he brings to everything, which, like, admittedly, that's a nice thing to have, but that's not going to sustain a serious relationship for any considerable amount of time. And a big reason I do think we're seeing some semblances of real Taylor is because a number of these interviews, she has talked about her career and owning her masters, and that was the times when she really felt the most genuinely excited about everything. A lot of the interviews have had exit signs behind her and other just really interesting things, and I would not expect exit signs everywhere if this was real Taylor being literal. This is the mirror ball breaking. Taylor is making it more and more evident to people that she is playing various different roles in order to keep various people interested in her and her music. But also she's doing so much with this album and made the album look incredibly simplistic on top of it, which is incredibly impressive. And I love the concept of trying to analyze every single thing that she's doing, but there's just so much going on right now, and I think that's on purpose. But every day that passes, more and more people are getting on board with concepts that were considered fringe in the fandom before this album. There has been a huge influx in the numbers of performance artlers and gaylers who are realizing there is something more going on than we previously believed. I think everybody knows that this feels big, and everybody is expecting it to resolve quickly, but I also think she may be continuing to employ a strategy I mentioned in one of my previous videos. The Dita Von Teese art of the tease of it all, like just stringing us along, giving us a little breadcrumbs. I mean, she's talked about breadcrumbs and bread loaves and things like that. I think everybody knows that this feels big, and I think that's one of the reasons that everybody has such a strong opinion about it. It's been so weird lately because she has confirmed so many theories that a lot of theorists have had for years that we didn't have a lot of evidence to prove what they were, just suspicions that we have, but she keeps referencing it in various ways in her art. And look, I know they like to present our community like Taylor is sending secret messages to me in particular. That's not really what it's like. But there are about 400 years worth of signs and symbols that women and queer people have historically used to identify each other when the environment around us was hostile. And Taylor has used almost every single one. Like, I get that you can throw away just like one hairpin dropping, but the fact that Taylor has continued to keep referencing hairpin after hairpin, both visually and in her lyrics, and a lot of people, a lot of gaylers were like, oh my god, hairpin drop, hairpin drop, hairpin drop. If she didn't know the first time she used it, then why in the last Great American Dynasty at the beginning of the Eras Tour she had her hair fully pinned up, and as the Eras Tour continued she had less and less hairpins, more and more loose strands as she flirted with Rebecca Harkness more and more? Why does she use hairpins as such an important metaphor in a lot of the TTPD stuff, with asylums and references that seem like they're to conversion therapy? When she made Dorothea and a lot of gaylers were getting censored on the internet, a lot of us started calling ourselves Friends of Dorothea, and she mashed up It's Good to Have a Friend and Dorothea on the Eras Tour, which are two songs that are not at the same key, not at the same tempo. You really have to work really hard to get these two songs to work together, so it doesn't make any sense for her to do this if it's not to make some sort of point. She's been using tons of different colors and tons of different phrases and tons of different gestures that historically these are all methods that we use to locate each other and to find each other, and it's not about individual fans, it is about the community, and that's one of the reasons that Gaylor has thrived as much as it had, because we have such there's parts of the community that take it too far, but the part of the community that doesn't take it too far is exemplary. It is so fun. I have met so many incredible people, and I think that's a huge aspect of it. So I'm sorry if you expect like a full explanation of everything that she's doing anytime soon. I don't think I ever could make it. There is just so much that is going on, and I think she wants a lot of us to be overstimulated so we can't get the videos out as quick. So I think I'll leave this video here. If you have good faith questions, if you want to know more about any segment of this, please ask them quickly. Every video I pretty much stop while reading comments after a certain point, just because once it tilts to more people being absolutely cruel than, like, you know, good conversation, I kind of stop reading a lot of them. And sorry if my lighting or sound or anything is weird. I have not really done a lot in this corner, and I am a little bit worried that there was probably some sound problems. Oh well, we'll see.